Welcome to the Iran 1400 Project podcast, where we explore the past, present, and possible futures of Iran through informed dialogue, independent thought, and diverse voices. From historical insight to emerging narratives, we connect ideas to action in the pursuit of a more just, inclusive, and forward-looking society. Join us as we rethink Iran's trajectory, one conversation at a time.
Today, we're exploring something really fascinating and incredibly relevant, the evolving idea of peace in Iran. And our guide for this is a brand new article actually published just today, June 28th, 2025. It's called The Evolution of Peace in Iran, From Resistance to Civic Reconciliation. It's by Vafa Mostakim from the Iran 1400 Project. So our mission today really is to unpack how this concept of peace has shifted over, centuries in Iran. It goes way beyond just no war happening. Iran's unique history, empires, religious diversity, these incredible intellectual traditions, it all feeds into this really complex, nuanced understanding. We think it's going to be a journey with some maybe surprising perspectives that'll give you a much clearer picture.
Absolutely. And it's important to say up front, this deep dive isn't about pushing any specific political or religious viewpoint. Not at all. The article itself really tries to show how all these different strands, you've got ancient cosmopolitanism, religious ideas of virtue, revolutionary resistance, and now this move towards civic reconciliation, how they've all woven together. It's about exploring the richness and, sometimes the contradictions in Iranian thought over time, just giving you that fuller picture.
Okay, so let's dive right in. A key point seems to be that in the Iranian imagination, peace isn't just quiet. It's tied up with justice, with resistance, with the moral core of society. How different is that from, say, common Western ideas?
Well, it's quite a contrast. Western realist traditions often frame peace in terms of like a balance of power. Deterrence can feel a bit static. But Iran's history seems to offer something more dynamic, more complex. It's like an evolving ideal, really embedded in the values of society itself, changing over time. It's less about just a political arrangement, more like a moral and civic journey, you could say.
A moral journey. That's interesting. So, okay, going back, way back, ancient Iranian statecraft. How did they manage peace with all that diversity? It must have been immense.
Yeah, immense is right. From the Achaemenids, right through the Safavids and Qijars, they practiced what some scholars call cosmopolitanism in practice, which basically means they governed these incredibly diverse populations, different ethnicities, religions, cultures, under one central authority. But the key thing is, peace wasn't really maintained by trying to make everyone the same, homogenization. It was more about pragmatic accommodation, finding ways to live together.
So not forcing unity, but allowing difference.
Exactly. It kind of challenges that idea that you need uniformity for unity. Ancient Iran suggests maybe peace can actually thrive when you actively embrace difference. And this tied into the Persian concept of far.
Divine glory.
Right, divine glory. But it wasn't just about power. It emphasized that a ruler's legitimacy came from justice, from moral authority. Think about cities like Isfahan or Shiraz. They flourished as these centers of tolerance, learning, where Jews, Christians, Zoroastrians, Muslims, they all coexisted. That left a lasting mark, this idea of peace as fundamentally living with difference.
Living with the difference. That's powerful. Okay, but then things shift, right? We get to the Safavid era. Shi'ism becomes the state religion. How does that change the equation for peace, especially the moral side?
Yeah, that's a really significant turning point. The tragedy of Karbala, Imam Hussein's martyrdom, it introduces this enduring paradigm of sacred resistance against tyranny. It's deeply rooted in concepts like Mazlumiyat. It's a sense of being wronged, and shahadat, which is martyrdom.
So resistance becomes...
In a way, yes. This narrative elevates resistance to a spiritual virtue. It's seen as a path to reconciling the soul through sacrifice for justice. So peace, in this context, it's not about surrender, it's not neutrality, it's definitely not just the absence of fighting. It becomes defined as steadfastness in the face of injustice.
Yeah.
It's an active, really morally charged stance. And that echoes later on significantly.
Fascinating. Resistance as virtue. But Iranian thought often has these countercurrents, doesn't it? Was there also an internal focus? What about poetry, mysticism?
Oh, absolutely. That's a crucial complementary strand. You have poets like Saadi, Hafez, Bidel Delavi. They offer this incredibly rich vision of peace focused on inner harmony and universal love.
Yeah.
For them, peace comes from, detaching from the ego, feeling unity with creation, deep moral reflection. It's almost a mirror image of the external struggle.
So peace starts inside.
Exactly. And Saadi's famous line, all human beings are members of one body.
Right.
That's become a powerful symbol, hasn't it? It speaks to Iran's contribution to a kind of humanist conception of global peace. These traditions emphasize that real peace isn't won through fighting or rigid ideology, but through the deep transformation of the self and society. It's a really profound spiritual and intellectual source.
Okay, so we've got inner peace, societal values. How does this start to connect with actual governing? Let's jump forward to 1906, the Constitutional Revolution, a big moment. How did they try to institutionalize peace then?
Right. The Constitutional Revolution is pivotal.
Yeah.
It's really Iran's first major attempt to build peace into the system through, law, representation, civic accountability. The demands for justice, for rights they drew on both Islamic reformist ideas and Enlightenment thinking. It was a huge attempt to move away from sort of the arbitrary violence of dynasties toward a society based on contracts, on consultation, legal equality, a blueprint, really, for a more structured, predictable kind of peace within the state itself.
A blueprint. Okay. Now, around the same time, another thread emerges, one that's maybe less discussed but significant, the Baha'i faith. What did it add to this evolving picture of peace, maybe especially globally?
That's a really important thread, yes. The Baha'i faith starts in 19th century Iran. It's a spiritual and ethical movement, and its core message is about the unity of humankind, justice, peaceful coexistence. Baha'u'llah, the founder, he really redefines peace. He talks about it as a global ethic, something rooted in moral clarity, our shared humanity, spiritual justice.
The earth is but one country idea.
Precisely. That famous teaching. The earth is but one country and mankind, its citizens. It's a call for international cooperation, for equality, for governance based on trust, on truth, and crucially, there's a rejection of violence for advocacy. He emphasized the sword is put aside and true victory is achieved through the power of the word, the force of character, and the influence of ideas. That was pretty radical.
A different kind of power.
A completely different kind. And his son, Abdul Baha, took this vision and really engaged with the world practically. He wrote treatises on constitutionalism, political ethics, civic virtue. And then early 20th century, he travels widely, Europe, North America. He's talking to public audiences about peace, interfaith dialogue, racial equality, women's rights. It's quite remarkable. So together, their teachings offer this comprehensive vision that spans global unity and local reform. They pushed for a civic culture built on truthfulness, justice, service. And it represents this powerful example of what they call ethical resistance without enmity, fighting for principles, but without hatred.
Ethical resistance without enmity. That's a powerful concept. But history takes another turn, doesn't it? The 1979 revolution. How did that steer things back towards that theology of resistance we talked about earlier?
It absolutely did. The 1979 Islamic Revolution brought that theological lens of resistance right back to the forefront. Resistance against the monarchy, against what was seen as Western domination, cultural imperialism, martyrdom culture, the rhetoric of sacred defense, especially during the long Iran-Iraq War, that became dominant. Peace during that period was often framed as obedience to divine order, perseverance against perceived aggression. It felt like a large-scale return to that Karbala paradigm.
A very powerful, deeply embedded paradigm. But you mentioned earlier that eventually its hold loosened. Why did that happen? Why move away from permanent confrontation?
Exactly. Over time, especially for younger generations, the appeal of that constant struggle started to wane. The costs were just too high. People began yearning for something else, for what they felt were the basics of a good life: freedom, dignity, and civil stability. There was a growing sense, perhaps, that permanent confrontation wasn't the only way, or maybe even the best way, to achieve those things. The sheer weight of it all led to a different kind of aspiration.
So how is that aspiration playing out now? What does this mean for peace in Iran today? How's it being re-envisioned?
Well, what seems to be happening now is that peace is being rethought. It's not just about diplomacy or ideology anymore. It's emerging as a kind of civic ethic, an ethic grounded in participation and imagination in coexistence.
Like the woman life freedom movement?
That's a key example, yes. That movement seems to really embody this shift. It moves beyond sort of militarized resistance to demand something broader: inclusive belonging, transparency, justice for everyone. You see civil society actors, writers, artists. They're talking about peace not as silence, but as having a voice, not as obedience, but as demanding accountability. It really feels like a broader paradigm shift from ideological struggle to civic engagement.
And we saw glimpses of this earlier too, remember? Like President Khatami's Dialogue Among Civilizations initiative during the Reform era. That was an attempt to reclaim Iran's voice globally, focusing on ethical dialogue rather than just geopolitical clashes. Right. Wow. We've covered so much ground. It's quite a journey, tracing this idea of peace in Iran. From ancient ways of managing diversity, that sacred resistance, the poet's inner harmony, the attempts to build it into law, those global ethical ideas, and now these modern civic movements. It's a lot.
It really is. And it highlights this profound transformation over centuries, doesn't it?
Yeah.
You see these older paradigms often framing peace against an enemy, but the vision emerging today seems to emphasize maybe ethics over enmity, dialogue over domination, and coexistence over conquest. It's fascinating to watch, especially how younger generations seem to be redefining peace, not just as the struggle ending, but as the beginning of something new, just relationships, truthful governance, and shared belonging.
That's a powerful note to end on. Ethics over enmity. So here's something for you, our listener, to think about. Reflecting on this deep dive into Iran's evolving idea of peace, this shift from just no war to actively seeking justice and ethical relationships, how might that challenge or maybe expand your own understanding of peace? What does building just relationships truly look like in practice, whether that's in your own community or how nations interact, or maybe even just within yourself? Something to consider.
Thank you for listening to the Iran 1400 Project podcast. The Iran 1400 Project invites scholars, experts, and intellectuals to share their assessment of the evolution of institutions and ideas during the past 100 years to inspire a vision of Iran in the 1400s. If you found today's episode thought-provoking, be sure to subscribe, share, and continue the conversation. For more content and upcoming events, visit Iran1400.org. Until next time, stay engaged, stay informed, and stay hopeful.